It's another episode of the Internet Midnight Movie. This time around, I thought I'd bring you something a little different. I've done some stuff with some, made-for-television movies and some flat-out horror films and then some goofy 50s sci-fi. But I thought I'd go back a little bit further. And this one's from 1941. It does star a horror icon, and it was one of the movies which was fairly common to see on the old midnight movies or Saturday afternoon. We had a host here in Northeast Ohio that did Saturday afternoon movies too, called Superhost. He was awesome. And that is the East Side Boy or East Side Kids. It's East Side Kids. East Side Kids in Spooks Run Wild. I think it is Spooks. Yeah, Spooks Run Wild. Sorry, brain is not functioning properly today. But it stars East Side Kids, who you guys may know is one of their later versions of the Bowery Boys. In the 40s, they were at the different studio, so they had a different name. Effectively the same concept. It's got a comedic take to it. Though this one's a little darker than you'd expect. Somebody actually gets shot with buckshot, but you don't know at the time that it's not terribly serious. And it also stars horror icon in Bela Lugosi, who plays like this mysterious mad scientist, doctor, evil guy. You think maybe he's doing something bad. Not Dr. Evil, but an evil doctor. Anyway, so Bela Lugosi is in the movie. You have a pretty typical setup where the boys break out of a reform camp to go back. The ringleader of the group is going to go on a date or something, which you never find out because they never get there. Basically what happens is they're cutting through a cemetery. One of them gets shot, basically, with some buckshot, and then they take him to the only place they go that's near, which is this spooky old house where this Bela Lugosi's character is at. And then Spooks Run Wild. It's it's a comedy. It's not played seriously. Again, unlike some of the other Bowery Boy / East Side Kids movies, it's a little darker than maybe you would expect. But I don't want to give the impression that it's like really serious, because it's not. Once they get to the house, things are pretty much slapstick and goes into a pretty typical formula. This is the first appearance of one of their returning running gags that they did, which is one of the guys is reading in the dark, and they're like, "How can you read in the dark?" And he's like, "I went to night school." That's a pretty common gag for this group. It's in more than one of their movies for sure. And some of the TV appearances and stuff they did as a group, that was one of their go-to. It's almost like Abbott and Costello, Suzanne First, only not as extended and long. It's just sort of a quick hit. But anyway, if you haven't seen one of these movies, like I say, it's a formula flick. They get into the haunted house, a bunch of goofy things happen, a bunch of silliness, and then it's resolved at the end. And I'm not going to give you the resolution because it's got a kind of a cool ending to it. I've always rather enjoyed. If you like stuff from the 30s and 40s and 50s, basically what you need to consider the East Side Kids and then the Bowery Boys were sort of a poor man's version of, I don't really want to say poor man's versions of the Three Stooges, because at the time they were probably a little more prestigious, even though they worked at a smaller studio, because they were making features and not shorts like the Stooges were making. But think of it as like a poor man's Abbott and Costello. They did some genre stuff. It's kind of goofy. It's kind of fun. But it's not, up to the quality of an Abbott and Costello. And it's really not up to the quality of a Three Stooges short. The slapstick and stuff is not as physical, and the timing isn't the same. But it comes out of the same sort of vaudevillian, gimmicky, goofy, just fun. They literally, and honestly, don't make them like this anymore. And when they do try to make them, nobody shows up at the theater. So that's about all I got for this one. So I'm going to go ahead and wind it down here and watch and enjoy Spooks Run Wild here on the Internet Midnight Movie.